as you're watching this video right now, you're probably watching me and listening to me. And if I start writing some random things down here, you're probably watching what I'm writing, correct? But guess what? You're not really watching the background. And why is that? Because I'm the person in the foreground and I'm the important part. So the important part is in the foreground. But it's not like you're completely ignoring the background. You can see everything. You can see the sea and the birds and everything. So why is it that you concentrate on me and not the background? Well, that's because, let me take away what I wrote here. That's because of depth. When you have depth, you can help the person focus on the foreground more than the background. And when you have depth, you give your book cover a sense of 3D space. You know that that whole sea, that whole beach is not in my apartment. Why? Because of depth, because you understand how 3D space works. And once you understand depth and you implement this in your book cover designs, your book covers are going to become super professional. This is one of the things I discovered way too late when it comes to KDP. But as soon as I did discover it, I haven't stopped doing it ever since. So how do you show depth in your cover? Well, there's two ways you can do this. Now, both of these techniques of showing depth are equally as important. And I usually use both of them for every single cover I make. And what are these two techniques? Well, the first one is overlay. What do I mean by overlay? Well, if you have your book cover and you have a piece of text, let's say your title, and you have your subtitle, you can make your main image overlap your title text or your subtitle, or maybe you have a little badge on the little circle badge. You can make your main image overlap that badge. Now, it's extremely important that you don't overlap your title where it makes it unreadable. Now, if your title is unreadable, then Amazon's going to reject your book and you're going to have to go and redo your cover and send it back again. Now, one of my covers was a book about sneakers, and I had the main title here, and then I had the subtitle above the main title. And what I did is I had shoes falling down. So there's a shoe there falling down, there's a shoe here, there's a shoe here. And what I did, I had one main shoe, one big shoe that was slightly overlapping the title, but it wasn't enough to make it unreadable. It was just slightly overlapping it. And then I had other shoes in the background that were behind the title. And if they were behind the title and in front of the title, then that shows a sense of 3D space, because there's shoes behind the title and the shoes in front of the title. So we know the title's in the middle and there's a big sense of 3D space. But there's one more thing that I did with this book cover. By the way, this book was making a steady $2,000 a month. So these techniques work. There's one more super important thing that I did with this book cover that I do with every book cover to show depth even more. And that's adding the correct shadows. When you add shadows, what does that mean? That means there is a sense of 3D space. Why? Because if a light hits something, the only reason it projects a shadow onto something else is because there is a sense of 3D space. So now that this shoe is overlapping the title, there can be a little tiny shadow here that shows even more that this book is overlapping. And because there's a light projecting onto the shoe, it creates a little shadow on the title, which gives it a sense of 3D space. Now, even if your book cover is super simple and it's literally just text and a color on the background, if this is your text and then you have even more, let's say it's like that, even if it's just one color and your text is one color, just by adding a small light shadow around your text, I want to show you in the practical video down below, just by adding a small light shadow, your book cover is going to look 10 times more professional. Now, if the simple no shadow look is what you're going for, that's fine. But if you wanted to give it some extra sense of depth, some extra sense of 3D space, then adding a slight shadow is the best way to do this. Now, a lot of covers, even big publishers, use both of them, because if you show depth and a sense of 3D space, then your book covers look so much more professional. And a lot of clients used to come to me complaining about their book covers, and I barely ever saw anyone overlap their main image with the title or create a sense of 3D space using shadow. It's always just the same boring book cover that you get on Fiverr. It's always title, subtitle, image, and author name. Take a look at your book cover. If your book cover follows this layout, do you really want to be just like everyone else? So think about getting your main image to overlap your text a little bit, or add some shadows, create some 3D space, create some depth. It's going to make your book cover stand out so much more. And best of all, shadows create a good sense of contrast. And we talked about contrast earlier. So if you haven't watched that video, go back and watch the contrast video so you can see how important contrast really is.